Welcome to Time Traveling Team, the weekly podcast where we review every story of Doctor Who right from the very beginning. I'm Paddy.
And I'm Tricia. This week we join the Doctor, Nyssa and Tegan as they find themselves battling the Mara once more in Snakedance. As usual, we'll be discussing the Doctor, companions and villains and giving our thoughts on the story as a whole.
We'd also love to hear your thoughts on this story, so in order to join the discussion, you can check us out at Time Team, that's TIMETEAMP, on Facebook, X and Instagram, or you can email us at timetravelingteam@teamproductions.com. It was a big week for the Doctor this week, as of when we were recording. He got to perform at the Oscars.
He did get to perform at the Oscars. I did not see it because I have absolutely zero interest in the Oscars, though I will say I did watch the In Memoriam and oh my god, I think that's probably the best In Memoriam they've done ever.
I didn't actually see the. I didn't see
Crazy.
the. I didn't see the memoriam part, unfortunately. I must actually look it up.
Oh, watch it. It was really good. It was really good. But yeah, no, Shushi got to perform at the Oscars, which is
Mm-hmm.
great, which has him being, I think, the second Doctor to appear on stage at the Oscars. So obviously, Peter Capaldi won an Oscar back in 1995,
Mm-hmm.
96.
Yeah.
And now we've had Shushi appearing on stage at the Oscars, which is cool. Also, another big day today. They announced the air date for the start of the next season.
They did, May 11th.
Which is the 11th of May.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Actually, it'll be an interesting thing when we come to the modern era of Who, when we do the cast trivia, because there's a couple of Oscar winners and a couple of Oscar nominees in the people that just appeared one-off episodes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that is still
in the future.
In the future. Let's talk about the present by discussing a story from the past. Time me away, Minas.
Yes.
So, do you want to start the recap?
I will indeed. Part 1. On the TARDIS, Nyssa models a new outfit for the Doctor, but he ignores her and instead declares that there is something wrong with the TARDIS. He says that the ship has been pulled off course, but there doesn't seem to be anything wrong with the control console. Nyssa takes a look at their location and says that one of the planets, Menusa, was once home to the mighty Menusan and Sumaran empires. This causes the Doctor to become alarmed, and he remembers that earlier that day he attempted to teach Tegan and Nyssa how to read star charts. He then realizes that Tegan gave him the coordinates to Menusa, and he asks where she is at that moment. At that moment, Tegan is in her bed, dreaming of approaching a tunnel entrance shaped like a snake's mouth. At the entrance, she suddenly looks down and screams, which actually wakes her up. The Doctor and Nyssa rush in, having been drawn by her screams. She says that she had a bad dream, and the Doctor rushes forward, demanding to know what it was about, and makes her admit to having it before. Elsewhere, on Menusa, a young man aloofly gazes at a bronze statue of a snake that has a blue jewel set in its mouth. A woman named Tana arrives and chides him for not being fully dressed for his trip to the caves for an upcoming ceremony. The young man, her son Lon, says that he is bored and reluctant to go, even though he is the son of one of the leaders of the Federation that Menusa is now a part of. He asks what the point of the event is, which celebrates the destruction of the Mara entity over 500 years previously. He says that the celebration seems to be just another way for the Federation to tell people how great life is under its control. Tana points out that it is better now than when the Mara were in control. Lon says that the ceremony is superstitious nonsense and that the Mara will not return. Tana says that legends of the Mara are fascinating and recounts a trip that she and her father took to see a pagan ceremony that was overseen by a cult called the Snakedancers. They are then interrupted by the arrival of Ambril, the court historian, who tells them that he is ready to take them to the caves. Lon goes to get ready, impishly throwing the statue at Ambril to catch. Back on the TARDIS, the Doctor reveals that Menusa is the home of the Mara, and that Tegan must still be somehow under its sway after encountering it on Divaloka, the planet of the Kinda. He says that he will hypnotize her in order to help her understand what her dream means. Despite Nyssa's concerns, Tegan goes through with the hypnosis. After briefly revisiting the events on Divaloka and her childhood, she arrives at the cave where the Doctor urges her to continue on through the Snake Mouth tunnel. Tegan says that she can't, but when the Doctor continues to urge her, her voice suddenly becomes possessed by the Mara, who tells her to get out, which wakes her up. The Doctor says that the cave entrance is a real place and they must find it. He tinkers with the hypnosis device in order to prevent the Mara from interfering again. On Menusa, Lon, Tana, and Ambrose and a bodyguard make their way through a busy marketplace, and they are attracted by the sounds of a barker who is touting his Mara exhibit. Lon demands to know what it is, and the barker, scared of Lon's status, admits that it is just a glorified hall of mirrors, causing Lon and the others to move on in disgust. A few moments later, the TARDIS lands in the marketplace. The Doctor adjusts the device to block out all the exterior sound and tells Nyssa that she will have to act as Tegan's ears. Nyssa points out that Tegan is still awake, but the Doctor informs her that the dreams can continue during the waking operations of the brain. He then asks around for information of anything resembling the tunnel entrance, and he gets pointed in the direction that Lon and the others have gone. At the tunnel, Amber attempts to go through the historical information surrounding it, but Lon is indifferent to it, preferring to test the echo quality of the vast cave. As they proceed, Lon asks about the legends discussing the return of the Mara, but Amber says that it is just a ghost story that the people tell their children to get them to behave. Lon says that Amble's predecessor believed in the legend, but Amble says that he was not objective in his work and went mad as a result. Tana then changes the subject by saying that they should go on through the main chamber. Back at the tunnel entrance, the Doctor and the others arrive, but Tegan is too scared to continue. The Doctor tells Nyssa that she will have to stay behind and look after Tegan. He makes his way through the tunnels and comes across Lon and the others. Tana says that she is disturbed by the Mara statue in the main chamber, and says that she is thankful that the return of the Mara is just a story. The Doctor enters and says that it isn't, but he is immediately apprehended by the bodyguard. The Doctor, hearing that Amber is an expert in the Samaran Empire, asks for his help, but Amber dismisses him. Lon, finding the situation amusing, asks the Doctor what he needs help with, and the Doctor explains the situation with Tegan and the Mara. He offers to bring them to Tegan, and Lon agrees, ignoring Amble's protests. However, unbeknownst to the Doctor, moments after he left them, a merchant selling wooden snakes toys approached Nyssa and Tegan, which caused Tegan to run off screaming back into the market. Nyssa gives chase but loses her in the crowd. She then returns to the cave entrance just in time to meet the Doctor and the others, and she tells them what happened. Lon angrily expresses his disappointment, and the Doctor and Nyssa leave to go look for Tegan. At that moment, Tegan wakes up in a fortune teller's boot, having been brought there after collapsing in the marketplace. The fortune teller removes the hypnosis device, but a frightened Tegan holds onto it, saying in a confused tone that it is important. Tegan asks the fortune teller about her abilities, but the fortune teller, taking pity on Tegan in her current state, admits that it is a scam and that she just makes up the visions that she sees in her crystal ball. Tegan suddenly begins to laugh, her voice taking on the Mara persona, and she demands to know what the fortune teller sees in the ball now. The fortune teller looks into the ball and screams when she sees a giant snake skull appear before the crystal ball explodes. Part 2. The fortune teller recoils from the glass shards, and when she turns around, she discovers that Tegan has vanished. Meanwhile, the Doctor and Nyssa return to the TARDIS in the hopes that Tegan went there, but there is no sign of her. The Doctor wonders why the Mara have returned and what their plans are with Tegan. He suggests that they split up and that he investigate the surrounding area for more information on the history of the Mara, whilst Nyssa goes looking for Tegan. Nyssa goes back to the marketplace, where a crowd have gathered around the fortune teller's tent. Tegan appears and gleefully tells her about what happened. Nyssa asks if she is okay, noticing that she is no longer wearing the hypnosis device. Tegan suddenly begs Nyssa to help her before the Mara reasserts control and tells Nyssa to leave her alone before fleeing into the crowd. Meanwhile, the Doctor makes his way to the Historical Society building and goes to seek an audience with Ambrose. Ambrose brushes him off, calling him a crank and saying that he has important work preparing for the ceremony the following day. The Doctor asks about the ceremony, and Ambrose says it is a commemoration of the destruction of the Mara by the Federation. The Doctor says the ceremony must be stopped until Tegan is found, but again Ambrose ignores him. The Doctor continues to plead his case by talking about what happened to Tegan. When he mentions her dream, one of Ambrose's assistants reacts and talks about the legend of the Mara's return. The assistant, Chella, says that the legend says the Mara were only banished and will return to the physical world via dreams through a meeting of the minds at the Great Crystal. The Doctor asks what that is, but Ambrose interrupts Chella, saying that the whole thing is mystical mumbo-jumbo. Ambrose then changes the topic of conversation to the range of Sumerian artifacts in his office, which he uses to further discredit the legends. However, when the Doctor points out his mistaken belief of the function of one of the items, Ambrose angrily orders him to get out. Meanwhile, in the marketplace, Nyssa continues her search for Tegan and goes back to the fortune teller's boot, where she finds the abandoned hypnosis device. Elsewhere, Tegan has taken refuge in the Mara Hall of Mirrors attraction. She initially enjoys the funny visuals the distorted mirrors make, but then grows fearful when a snake skull appears in one of them. Tegan turns away, but the skull orders her to face her. Tegan asks how the Mara can exist in the mirrors, remembering how it was defeated on Diva Loca, but the Mara points out that it isn't able to see its reflection whilst in the mirrors. Tegan continues to try and resist, but ultimately succumbs as the Mara snake tattoo appears on her arm. Outside in the marketplace, Chala catches up with the Doctor and gives him a small blue jewel similar to the one in the statue Ambril gave Lon. He says that it is known as the Little Mind's Eye, a title given to it by the Snake Dancers. He says that another much larger one, called the Great Mind's Eye, which is currently in Ambril's possession after it was removed from the cave. He then leaves as the Doctor asks who the Snake Dancers are, which causes everyone around him to stop and stare. A few moments later, he bumps into Nyssa, who shows him the hypnosis device and mentions her brief encounter with Tegan. He asks if she noticed the snake tattoo on her arm, but Nyssa says that she didn't. He says that they need to find her, but first they need to go back to the cave to examine the pictograms on the walls, as there could be useful information there. In the Hall of Mirrors, the Barker, who had observed Tegan's conversation with the Mara, thinking it was a trick, offers her a deal to add it to his show. However, the possessed Tegan angrily turns on him, saying that she is looking for someone. Later that evening, the Barker arrives at the Federation Palace and asks for an audience with Lon, who has chosen to ignore his stately duties and remain at home whilst his mother attends a banquet. He tells Lon that he has been summoned by Tegan. A curious Lon agrees to go meet Tegan, and the pair go back to the Hall of Mirrors. Once there, Tegan possesses him. Back in the cave, the Doctor and Nyssa manage to decipher the pictograms which show the Great Crystal is a focal point of gathered mental energy, but they cannot determine what it is gathered for, as the pictograph was sketched out. He then remembers the crystal that Chala gave him, and he tells Nyssa to follow him back to the TARDIS. Once there, he says they should try focusing their mental strength onto the crystal and see what happens. Nothing works, and the Doctor goes to try something else. He makes an adjustment to the hypnosis device and then tells Nyssa to observe as he puts it on and tries again. This time the crystal glows briefly before dying away again. Nyssa tells him what happened, and he says that the mental energy taken by the crystal can create matter. He says that the Mara must be hoping to use the Great Crystal to physically manifest itself back into the real world. He then tells Nyssa to stay there whilst he goes to make Ambril listen to him. He interrupts the banquet being held there, but Ambril refuses to listen to him and has him dragged away. Meanwhile, back in the cave, Tegan and the others go to the giant Mara statue, and she angrily asks where the Great Crystal is. When she gets no answer, she uses her snake tattoo to open a hidden wall, and they go inside, where they see the floor littered with ancient Sumerian artifacts. The Barker eagerly begins to examine them for their worth, whilst Lon and Tegan discuss retrieving the Great Crystal from Ambril. The Barker says that he could be of assistance, but the duo say that he has served his purpose, and they laugh as they order him to look at them. He reluctantly does so and stares into Tegan's glowing red eyes. Part 3. The Barker stands entranced and Tegan turns to Lon and tells him to go retrieve the Great Crystal. Meanwhile, Chala goes to visit the Doctor in his holding cell and brings him some food. The Doctor demands to be released, but Chala says that he will not be released until after the ceremony is over. The Doctor tells him by then it will be too late. He appeals to Chala's curiosity about the legend, and Chala admits that Ambril's predecessor, Dojan, also believed that the Mara might return. The Doctor asks what happened to Dojan, but Chala says that it doesn't matter and then leaves. He makes his way to Ambril's office and states his belief that the Doctor is harmless. Ambril reasserts his belief that the Doctor is a crank, just like Dojan, and then produces Dojan's journal, which he had been studying. He gives it to Chala, who reads the last entry that discusses Dojan's attempts to understand where the Mara went. Ambril says it means nothing, and it is the delusions of an old man who became a hermit before everyone lost touch with him. Lon then enters, and Ambril dismisses Chala before turning to Lon, who asks for help. At that moment, Nyssa sneaks into the Doctor's cell. She tries to get him out, but they are unable to pick the lock of the cell door. They hear someone approach, and the Doctor tells her to go hide. Chala returns and shows the Doctor Dojan's diary. The Doctor asks to be let out and manages to get Chala to say where the key to the holding cell is, revealing it is in Ambril's office. He then distracts Chala, allowing Nyssa to sneak out so she can try and get the key. The Doctor asks what happened to Dojan, and Chala reveals that he studied the arts of the snake dancers, which was outlawed by the Federation. Chala says that according to the legend, snake dancing was done to clear and purify the mind in preparation to resist the Mara's return. Meanwhile, back in Ambril's office, Lon asks about the Great Crystal, but Ambril says that he cannot reveal its location. Lon then produces one of the relics he took from the secret chamber in the cave, and Amber eagerly begins to examine it. Lon casually says that there are a lot of relics in the cave, and Amber asks about them, prompting him to follow Lon when he suggests showing them the chamber. After they leave, Nyssa sneaks into the office and tries to find the key, but she is apprehended by Tana and a guard just as she finds it. At the cave, Lon blindfolds Amber but assuages his fears by telling him that he will give him sole credit for discovering the secret chamber. After they arrive in the chamber, Amber eagerly begins to examine the artifacts, but he is shocked when he encounters Tegan, who demands to know where the Great Crystal is. Amber thinks that Lon is playing a trick on him, but he becomes frightened when Lon smashes the relics, and Tegan again demands the location of the crystal. Amber asks why everyone is so suddenly interested in the Great Crystal, explaining the Doctor's interest as well. Tegan says the Doctor must be killed to prevent his interference, which shocks Amber. Lon takes him aside and tells him to reinsert the crystal into the Mara statue in the cave. Amber refuses, but Lon threatens to destroy all the relics unless Amber cooperates. His scientific nature gets the best of him, and Amber agrees to do as they ask. Meanwhile, after having been placed in the cell with him, Nyssa and the Doctor read through Dogen's journal for any clues as to how to defeat the Mara. Nyssa examines the crystal the Doctor has, and then states that it was man-made and that it has perfect molecular structure. The Doctor examines it and agrees, but they become confused as it would take advanced technology to do that, but the technology currently on Menusa is nowhere near that level. The Doctor then theorizes that the Manusans created the Great Crystal to harness their mental abilities, but failed to realize they would amplify everything in their minds. He says that the crystal must have taken all the negative aspects of Menusan civilization and as a result created the Mara, which then wreaked havoc and destroyed the Menusan Empire. Nyssa asks if Dogen knew this and believed that the Mara would return, then why didn't he destroy the crystal? The Doctor says that he doesn't know, but they would have to find out. Amber and Lon return to Amber's office where Tana and Chella are talking. A stuttering Amber, at Lon's prompting, makes the announcement that Lon will take part in the ceremony tomorrow and that the Great Crystal will be returned to the cave. Chella says that it is forbidden, but Amber says it is just superstitious nonsense, and Lon says that he was the one who gave the order. Amber goes to retrieve the crystal, and Lon says that they should celebrate with a drink. Chella makes his excuses to leave and surreptitiously takes the key to the cell from Amber's office. However, after he leaves, Lon notices the key missing and he orders the palace to be sealed to prevent them from escaping. He joins his guards in the hunt and they manage to corner the Doctor, Nyssa and Chella as they attempt to escape. Lon orders them to be killed and the guards advance on them with drawn swords. Part 4. Tana arrives and orders the guards to stop. Lon says that they were plotting his assassination, but Tana says that the idea is foolish as they would have no reason to do so. The Doctor says that he only cares about saving Tegan and the location of the Great Crystal. Armble tells him that it is being sent to the cave for the ceremony, but the Doctor says that they can't allow that to happen. Tana says that they can do as they wish with the crystal, and Lon again reiterates his belief that they came to kill him. The Doctor takes note of Lon's odd behaviour and that he is now wearing long gloves, and realises that he has also been taken over by the Mara as well. He demands to know where Tegan is, and Lon laughs it off, saying that no one will believe him. The Doctor says that evil will never win, and Tana asks what they are talking about. Lon uses her confusion to his advantage and says that the Doctor believes him to be evil, and that is why he came to assassinate him. Fearful for her son, Tana orders the Doctor and the others to be locked away, but Lon says that he will show them the Great Crystal before they can be taken away. However, just as Amber goes to open the case, the Doctor tells the others to run, and they knock down the guards as they make their escape. Lon orders Amber and the guards to go after them. The Doctor and the others manage to lose the guards in the marketplace, and the Doctor asks Chella about the ceremony. Chella says that it will take place in a few hours, and the Doctor says that there might be enough time for them to find Dogen and seek his help. Chella says that Dogen hasn't been seen in 10 years, and things would have been simpler if the Doctor had let him grab the Great Crystal while they were trying to escape. The Doctor says that they needed to destroy the Mara completely, not just to prevent its physical return. He then says that he will try and seek out Dogen mentally through the smaller crystal that he has. Back in Amble's office, Tana asks Lon if he is okay, having now noticed that he is also wearing gloves. He says that he is fine and angrily tells her to leave him be when she starts to mollycoddle him. Amber returns a short while later with Lon's outfit for the ceremony, a replica of the outfit worn by the Federation leader that defeated the Mara. Lon smiles at the irony of the choice and asks Tana if she is coming, but she completely ignores him. However, she returns to her normal enthusiastic form when he returns dressed in the ceremonial attire. Meanwhile, up in the hills outside the city, the Doctor and the others find a hiding place in a ruined temple, and once there, the Doctor uses the crystal to send a mental image giving away their location. Later, Dojin arrives at the hidden temple, having been summoned by the message. The silent, wizened old man indicates for the Doctor to sit with him before taking a small snake from his satchel and allowing it to bite him on the wrist. He gives the snake to the Doctor, who also allows it to bite him despite Nyssa's objections. The Doctor struggles with the pain, but he then hears Dojin's voice in his head, who tells him that his fear is clouding his mind and to let it go. The Doctor struggles to ask his questions, but with Dojin's help, he is able to center himself and ask what is Snakedance. Dojin replies that they are currently experiencing one. He says that the Mara can only be destroyed when the Doctor discovers something called the still point, and that it exists within him. The Doctor then comes out of the trance, and Chella says that the ceremony will begin soon, and they need to head back to the city. At that point, the ceremony is well underway and has already reached the cave. Lon carries on with the ceremony, reenacting the final encounter between the Federation leader and the Mara. However, when it reaches the final stages, Lon destroys the prop Great Crystal and says that the time has come for the Mara to return. He removes his gloves to show the snake tattoo on his arm, causing the crowd to recoil in fear, and takes the real Great Crystal from Ambril. Tegan emerges from the secret chamber, her snake tattoo now having come alive, and orders Lon to place the crystal back into the statue. He does so, and the power emanating from it causes the crowd to fall to the floor in pain. The Doctor and the others arrive at that point, and Nyssa and Chella are also affected by it, but the Doctor is able to resist it. Tegan places her snake on the ground, and it grows to an enormous size. The Doctor tells everyone to look away, saying that the Mara is feeding off their fear. He then watches as the snake fuses with Tegan, with her face appearing in its mouth. She orders everyone to submit to her power. She sees the Doctor approaching, focusing on his crystal to help ward off the effects of the Mara, and the real Tegan begs him to help her. The Doctor struggles to maintain his composure, but a mental image of Dojin fills his mind, and he presses on. Tegan orders the Barker and Lon to take the crystal away, but it burns their hands when they try to touch it. The Doctor runs up to the dais and removes the great crystal from its plinth, causing Tegan to scream in pain as she and the snake separate. The snake dissolves as the crowd, including the Barker and Lon, come back to their senses. The Doctor then goes to comfort Tegan, who sobs as she tells him about what it felt like to have the Mara in her again. The Doctor hugs her as he says it is all right and that the Mara has been destroyed forever. Up in the hills, Dojin leaves the ruined temple and walks back into the wilderness. End of the story. Right, that's enough of me talking about snakes for the moment. I'm going to pass it over to you. What do you got for us this week?
Cool. So the air date for Snakedance was the 18th to the 26th of January 1983. The writer for the story is Christopher Bailey. This is the second and final on-screen writing credit for Christopher. We previously saw his work in Kinda. No surprise there.
Mm-hmm.
The director of the story is Fiona Cumming. This is the second of 4 directing credits for Fiona. We previously saw her work in Castrovalva, and we'll see it again in Enlightenment and Planet of Fire. The BBC's head of serials had read through the script and thought the storyline was a bit obscure and confusing. He felt it was a mistake to pursue this line of storytelling, but Jonathan Turner and Eric Soward disagreed because they liked the originality and promised more conventional storytelling for the rest of the season. What I think is interesting because, I mean, we can talk about this more in discussion, but like I don't think the storytelling in this is that far flung from what we've seen over the last 20 seasons of
Yeah,
Doctor Who.
we've seen stranger shit like.
Yeah. Like I said, we have Christopher Bailey back doing the writing for the series. We had mentioned that he had been unhappy with the rewrite that Eric Soward had done on Kinda, but he relented and agreed to come back when he was promised that any such interference would be minimal. Fiona Cumming was given the job to direct when she told Jonathan Turner that she preferred character-driven stories over the more standard type. In the DVD extras, Christopher Bailey said that the idea for the serial came from a story or article, I can't remember, about isolated Christian sects in the Arizona desert that handled snakes as part of religious rituals. The religious groups he was referring to are actually located in Appalachia, so areas such as Tennessee, Kentucky, and Georgia, and not actually Arizona.
Hmm.
Once again, Christopher Bailey used Buddhist terms, so Manusa is the human realm, Ta'ana is craving, and Dugdale or Dugdali, I can't remember how that was pronounced. How was it pronounced in the episode?
It's not. He's not actually. His name is never said.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to say Dugdali, just because it seems to go from Dugati, meaning unhappy existence. Dogen was an homage to Dogen. I'm getting all this wrong. Sorry, I'm not an expert in those languages. A Zen master who lived in 13th century Japan. Dugdali, or Dugdale, or whatever his name actually is, had earlier been called Duncan, um, or not Duncan, Dushan, my apologies, which is a platform that's used by Hebrew priests, while Chela was named for the Hindu word meaning religious disciple, which makes sense for
Hmm.
his character. 2 weeks prior to production and this kicking off, Peter Davison was asked to film what he believed was a promotional trailer for Australian television. In actuality, it was a ruse concocted by Jonathan Turner for Davison's appearance on the TV show This Is Your Life,
Ah.
where he was surprised by Matthew Waterhouse, Sarah Sutton, and Janet Fielding already there in full costume. They're also accompanied by Eamon Andrews, who is obviously the presenter of This Is Your Life. It marked the second time a Doctor Who star had featured on the show, the other being John Pertwee in 1971. I do know that Tom Baker was also on it at one point, because I think Liz Sladen did the Tom Baker one,
Oh,
and
cool.
so did John Leeson. Designer Jan.
Yeah, you're getting really bad with the names today.
I really am, like, fucking hell. Uh, Spashinsky? We're going to go with Spashinsky. Um, had wanted to use an outside firm to build the sets, but didn't get permission until the very last minute. This meant the sets had to be constructed really quickly, and he ended up being really disappointed with the results, which I get. Do you know? The last episode ran over, which led to the removal of a scene where the Doctor comforts Tegan a bit more about her ordeal. Um, Apparently, though, it does get included in the next story, so curious to see that. Um, it does include the explanation that the Mara could only be destroyed during the process of its becoming, which creates a bit of a plot hole if the serial is watched in isolation, because it doesn't really make sense on its
Yeah,
own.
I kind of sneakily advanced watched last night, and it is in the next story, and it's used as the hook to bring the TARDIS to its new
Something,
location. Yeah.
yeah. Peter Davison joked that he saw the story as a bit of a rest, so that Janet Fielding could go and do her evil acting. Gave him a bit of a break. In the commentary, he also suggested that the device the Doctor builds to control Tegan's dreams looks a bit like the original iPod. Get it done 18 years too early. Both Sarah Sutton and Janet Fielding disliked their costumes. With Sarah Sutton going so far as to say it makes her look fat. I disagree. I think it makes make her look slimmer than her other outfit,
Hmm.
personally. Um, Peter Davison said in the DVD commentary that it was worse than Colin Baker's costume.
Like it's just a bit weirdly designed because like the bottom part of the dress looks like a folding fan.
Do you know what the issue is, right? I think the style and the cut is nice. It's just the color combinations just make no fucking sense.
Yeah. Although I don't really know what's wrong with Tegan's outfit.
I think it's the sort of strapless boob tube type thing that she's wearing.
Gotcha.
Um, Presiding over the ceremony, we have whoever's referred to as the megaphone man, the man with the megaphone. Um, and he says, "The first temptation is fear. I offer you fear in a handful of dust." This is a reference to a passage from the T.S. Eliot poem The Wasteland, which says, "And I will show you something different from either. your shadow at morning striding behind you, or your shadow at evening rising to meet you. I shall show you fear in a handful of dust. Martin Clunes, who plays Lon, who we will talk about in a little bit, he's kind of embarrassed about his role in the serial, mainly because chat show hosts kept bringing it up and showing clips of him stressing the funny costumes that he had to wear. Which, to be honest, with the exception of the last costume, I don't think his costume is that funny.
It
It's just
would,
the last one, which has clouds on it.
yeah, like his
The
normal
rest of his
costume for the
costume
entirety of the
actually looks
story
quite cool.
is fine. Yeah, there's no issue with it.
Yeah. But let's talk about our cast in a bit more depth. So, as Ambril, we have John Carson. This is the only Doctor Who acting credit for John. His non-Who credits include The Saint, The Baron, Man in a Suitcase, The Champions, Department S, The Avengers, and The New Avengers. John passed away in 2016. As to Anna, we have Colette O'Neill, again only Doctor Who acting credit for Colette. Her non-Who credits include Hancock's Half Hour, The War of the Roses, Z-Cars, Coronation Street, Taggart, Peak Practice, and Sherlock Holmes. Colette passed away in 2021. As Dojan, we have Preston Lockwood, again only Doctor Who acting credit for Preston. His non-Who credits include Time Bandits, Electric Dreams, Nicholas Nickleby, Poldark, and Jeeves and Wooster. Preston passed away in 1996. It's getting very depressing.
Mm-hmm.
As Lon, we have the previously mentioned Martin Clunes is the only Doctor Who acting credit for Martin. While not his first acting role, this was one of his first major acting roles. His non-Who credits include No Place Like Home, Jeeves and Wooster. He's probably most prominent for most people of our generation, which is
Yeah.
Men Behaving Badly.
Mhm.
He was also in Shakespeare in Love. He appears on Have I Got News to You? And probably like younger generations might know him from Doc Martin, which is a more recent show.
I remember Men Behaving Badly was huge. Like himself and Neil Morrissey were just like on everything. And like I actually
Yeah,
remember one of my favorite episodes of Have I Got News for You was when they appeared on the same team and they took on Ian Hislop and some other one. It was just fucking brilliant.
yeah. As Mr. No Name, Doug Dale, Doug Dolly, whatever, we have Brian Miller. And all I can really say is, hello, Mr. Sladen. How are you doing? Brian is the husband of Sarah Jane Smith actress Elizabeth Sladen. This is the first of 4 Doctor Who credits for Brian. We'll see, or in some case, hear him again in Resurrection of the Daleks, Remembrance of the Daleks, and then years and years later in Deep Breath. While he did not act opposite his wife on Doctor Who, he did appear in the Sarah Jane Adventures when he appeared in the story The Mad Woman in the Attic, and before that, he was in Big Finish's Sarah Jane Smith audio story Ghost Town, also appearing opposite his wife. Their daughter, Sadie, also appeared in the Sarah Jane Smith audio series, though not in that particular story. That's probably the one story that
Yeah.
her character is not in. And now voices Sarah Jane Smith for Big Finish.
I
Um,
I think she might only be in it for like just a small bit, but that's only as a sort of a thing to get Josh into Sarah Jane's story.
I
Which
think so. She? I can't remember. I'll have to listen to it again. Oh no, how terrible.
yeah, I
Um,
know.
Brian's non-Who credits include Brazil, Line of Duty, The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, Casualty, Coronation Street, and Wizards vs. Aliens. Lastly, we have Chella, who's played by Jonathan Morris. This is Jonathan's only Doctor Who acting credit. His non-Who credits include Beaugest, The Prisoner of Zenda, and Bread. I don't know if there's a sitcom called Bread, which I've never heard of before. Have you
I
ever heard of Bread?
I've heard of it, but I've never seen it.
I'm curious. British television sitcom about a close-knit working-class family in Liverpool. It's from 1986 to 1991, which is probably why I don't know it. But yeah, and that ends our trivia.
Lovely.
So, Paddy, we have gone through the story summary. Thank you very much, and the trivia. Trivia.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I don't know what is wrong with me today, but anyway, let's get on to the meat and potatoes, as it were,
Yep.
of this podcast, which is our character discussion.
Mm.
So, for anyone who is new, hello,
Hello.
welcome.
Mm-hmm.
Every episode, we discuss the characters in the show.
Yes.
So, we discuss the Doctor, we discuss the companions, which in this case is Nyssa and Tegan.
Mm-hmm.
We discuss any prominent characters, of which I think we have a few this week.
We do.
So I would say probably Chella, Dugdale, if we want to talk about him just a little bit.
So the ones that I have kind of put down were Chella,
Mm.
Lon, Tana, Ambril, and Dojan. Dugdale, who is like the carnival barker, he doesn't really do anything apart from just be Brian Miller. So I wouldn't like. He has no real agency of his own or impacts the story in any way. So I wouldn't do a character piece on him.
Okay. I will just say the only thing I really had about him anyway was I actually really like Brian Miller, like as because I'd only seen him in the Sarah Jane Adventures
Mm-hmm.
stuff. It's the Sarah Jane Adventures story. I'd seen him in Deep Breath, obviously, which he's literally only in for like 2 seconds,
Mm-hmm.
and I'd heard him in the Sarah Jane Smith, but I hadn't actually seen him acting on his own.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so to actually see him have a fair few scenes, because he is in the story for the first like 2 episodes proper, and then obviously he
Yeah.
sort of appears about the end. Um, I do quite like his sort of carny
Mm-hmm.
flim flam man type thing. I think he
Yeah.
did it really well.
He
But you're
really
right, he doesn't drive plot or anything, but I think he played it really well.
he did a really good job as being like the carnival confidence man. It's just not utilized in the story to any great capacity.
Yeah. And then for villains, we have the Mara. And I suppose we have the Mara in Tegan.
Yeah.
You know,
I wanted to include Ambril as a villain because that guy got on my fucking nerves, but apparently we know he's just a prominent character.
I wanted to include Lon because he's a jackass.
Yeah,
But
yeah, we can discuss this. We'll stack rank it so that Lon and Ambril will be the last two we discuss in prominent characters.
yeah.
Right.
But the way we work it is whoever reads out the socials
Mm-hmm.
gets to go first. This comes from a long, long string of do you go first or do I go first?
Yeah.
So at some point last year, we decided whoever does the socials goes first.
Yeah.
So Paddington,
Mm-hmm.
you did socials, my love,
I
which
did.
means that you get to go first. So we'll start off with the man himself. What are your thoughts on the Doctor this time around?
This is a much better showing from the Doctor here. I'm really happy to say that. It's a much better showing. I know that from the outside it looks like he's still being his prickish self because he's essentially using Tegan as a tool in order to defeat the Mara. But he's making sure that there's enough safeguards in place to protect her while that's happening. And I think that it's a good thing to see. That because we've seen sometimes the Doctor use his companions as a tool and not put those safeguards in place, i.e., the second Doctor with Jamie in Evil of the Daleks. But this time around here, it's nice to see that no, he has Tegan's best interest at heart. One thing that I love seeing was actually like seeing that the Doctor is vulnerable here, which is a trait I like in a good Doctor Who story because he's not all knowledgeable. He has a vague understanding of what's going on, but he's trying to find out more. And when it comes to the resolution of the story, without Dojan's help, the Doctor doesn't win the day. He's
Mm.
struggling to get up to that plinth, and it isn't until like he asks for help that Dojan's Obi-Wan Kenobi Force Ghost uh, type shit comes in and helps him just kind of get up that last step. Um, so I was really like, after weeks of not being happy with this incarnation of the Doctor, I now have one where I don't think I have a bad thing to say about him. And also, one small thing, I really enjoyed his quintessential Doctor moment, which is uh, the I did in the recap that he corrects Amber over the use of an artifact, and the artifact is called the Face of the Six Delusions. Or sorry, the Six Faces of Delusions, and there's only five faces on it, but it turns out it's a headdress, and it's meant to represent that the wearer is the sixth face. And when the Doctor points that out, Amber just says, just get the fuck out of here." Um, so like, I really enjoyed that moment because I thought it was such a like like one of those quirky Doctor moments. So yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I will say, like, I've been quite critical of Peter Davison's Doctor up to now. I think we can all agree. Um, I would say this is much more on par with his initial performance in Castrovalva.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and maybe that's down to the directing, do you know?
Mm-hmm.
If you're coming to Castrovalva as well.
Yeah.
So, I think he's just better. I will nitpick a little bit his treatment of Tegan at the beginning because I kind of disagree with you a small bit
Okay.
in how he treated her dream, because really up until he realized it was the Mara, or like he got confirmation that it was the Mara, he was very pushy, much
Yeah.
more so than we would have, say, seen Doc Tom be with Sarah Jane, where if you think back to Eldrad,
Mm.
um, and just the care and the comfort that he took with her, taking her through that experience, versus the Doctor here, who's like pressuring Tegan to remember.
Yeah.
And
No.
maybe he knows her well enough to know that like she needs pushing and stuff. But just given how tense their relationship has been, it still felt a little bit dickish to me.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. No. I'd agree that at the start, when it's still uncertain as to what they're dealing with, he does come across as quite brusque and brash with her.
yeah, and like I found it kind of interesting and a bit weird that he even built the fucking iPod thing, because again, we have seen the Doctor in the case of Sarah Jane, you know, Sarah Jane and Eldrad. The Doctor can hypnotize people himself. Um, so I don't know why he had to do the machine thing, but that could just be me being overly pedantic. I will say though that I like how it. So they went from the kind of brusqueness at the beginning, which I was not a fan of,
Mm-hmm.
and I was like slightly concerned, like, oh, for fuck's sake, is this going to be it again? Do you know? I do like the fact that the end, while he's not exactly lovey-dovey with her, and
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't put it up with, say, the second Doctor and Victoria into the
Mm-hmm.
Cybermen,
Mm-hmm.
but he does offer her some comfort. I would be curious to see the rest of the scene that was cut. Obviously, I'll
Mm-hmm.
see that next week. But I do quite like that. Um, I think again we see that, like, as much as I actually quite like Tegan as a character, we are kind of seeing that, like, the Doctor and Nyssa on their own are really quite effective.
Yeah.
And he puts such great trust in Nyssa and he bounces off her so well. I'm really enjoying that we're getting to see that this season. Like,
Mm-hmm.
even as much as I found him annoying last week, I do love the fact that their relationship is developing a bit more, because I think it went underdeveloped last season.
Yeah.
Um, I love his dynamic with Chella.
Mm-hmm.
I think they work really well together. I love that, like, the Doctor pushes him, but like he's not an asshole to him.
Yeah.
He pushes him enough to be like, come on, do the right thing, listen to yourself, like, whatever. But he's not like demanding or whatever, like someone in that position really could have been.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I do love his experience with Dojin. It really reminds me of um, Kempo Rinpoche and that
Mm-hmm.
kind of stuff from Planet of the Spiders. And the idea of the Doctor having to learn to center and learn to accept, or whatever the learning is.
Yeah.
I like seeing the Doctor having to learn a mental thing, or like a Zen state type thing from someone else.
Yeah.
Um, so I did really like that. So for me, there was a lot I really liked about the Doctor in this. Like I said, I was really worried at the start, and I was like, for fuck's sake.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think it worked really well. The one thing that I was disappointed that we didn't get to see, and maybe this kind of ties in more to Tegan, is the resolution of that look we got at the end of last week's episode.
Yeah. And
Um,
but I think that's more of a story issue than it would be like a Doctor issue, because it's the way that it's set up is that it's pretty much almost instantaneous that they go from Tegan coming back on board, plotting out the course, and then her going for her rest, and then it's straight into Mara territory again.
yeah, so I would have liked to have seen them resolve that, but
Oh,
again, when you
absolutely.
have different people writing concurrently and stuff, and they clearly didn't have a bridging moment. But yeah, I think much better. Like I said, much more like the Doctor I think we saw in Castrovalva,
Mm-hmm.
um, which could be down to Fiona Cumming, who directed both.
Yeah, I like. I think you've got a combination of Fiona, and then you have Chris Bailey, who is handling his original piece again, this time without like
Mm.
I would like to have seen or even read like what his initial draft was, because that Doctor might have carried over the Castrovalva spirit.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. But no, I think good outing. Honestly, like looking ahead, I think in terms of our ranking for the ramblings,
Mm-hmm.
I think this one's in contention. I think it's
Oh yeah,
a good
definitely.
outing. Um, good dynamic with everybody. Good back and forth with Lon. Good back and forth with um Ambril. Uh, good connection with Chala.
Mm-hmm.
Overall, yeah, quite good.
No, definitely, I'd agree.
Okay, then we have our companions. So we have Nyssa, and then we have Tegan for about 20 minutes,
Yeah,
if even.
yeah.
So which one do you want to do first?
Um, I want to talk about Nyssa first,
Mm,
because I I think I have less to say about Nyssa, even though she's in the story more. I have less to say about her, I think,
okay.
and the reason I have that is because I don't know. I don't know what it is. I can't really, and I've been trying to put my finger on it all day. But just something about her solo sections in this story, they just felt lacking, because when she's by herself, she's kind of chasing after Tegan,
Mm,
and then it isn't until she's back with the Doctor that we actually get to see her at her best, because like trying to get him out of the cell, and then it's um well, like first, like it's her independent nature that she can sneak into a fucking palace, try and get to the dungeon to free the person, then sneak into another office, grab the key. So I always love that about Nyssa. She's not afraid to take the risk to get stuck into stuff. But I think where she kind of we see the Nyssa that we've kind of grown to like, or is when she's with the Doctor, because then she kind of helps point him in the direction as to the resolution. So like she's the one that figures out that actually the crystal is man made with the perfect molecular structure. So starts him down that track of the exposition. And I don't know what it is, but I think I would have loved to have seen that, but for the solo sections, where she kind of makes these realizations without the doctor around, and then she can come back and report it to him, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I get what you mean. I think Nissa having revelations and figuring things out, I think it helps when she has someone to bounce her ideas off of.
Hmm.
We've seen it in previous stories where she's been paired up with somebody. Like last week it was what's his face? The
Damon.
Yeah. So she works really well um when she's bouncing off someone. I think that's also kind of a storytelling thing because she has someone that she can actually talk to. So like her coming to a realization makes more sense.
Hmm.
Um, I think in this story, I would kind of agree. I think her solo pieces aren't as strong because, to be honest, I get what they were going for with the solo pieces, but they kind of make her out to be a little bit stupid.
Yeah.
Um, because A, she's just running after Tegan, which there's only so much that we can really show her doing that, right? But particularly, like, I agree with you, like, she's creeping into the palace or castle or whatever. She's finding the cell. She's sneaking into Ambro's office and finding the key. But like, Nissa, what made you think the key would be in a book?
Yeah.
Like, there's just small little things which are clear. They're like, hey, Sarah, pretend you're looking for a key, and Sarah's like, oh shit, whatever. But the small little things like that like I would appreciate they took a bit more care with because Nissa isn't that dumb. Do you know
No.
what I mean?
No, she's not. No.
Um, what I will say though is that like I actually really liked her scenes at the beginning.
Mm.
So before Tegan completely disappears.
Yeah.
Because her scenes with the Doctor and the TARDIS, I think I actually quite like the scenes with Nissa and the Doctor in the console room.
Hmm.
I think from like I like them being techie together and her being like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, I didn't do that. Like, because clearly it's a very collaborative space for them.
Yeah.
Which I really like. But I love how from the moment Tegan screams herself awake from her nightmare,
Hmm.
Nissa is very Doctor, calm your fucking tits
Yeah.
because like she's very much trying to advocate for Tegan, who is struggling to advocate for herself.
Yeah.
And we see how much she cares about Tegan.
Hmm.
Um, so we saw it there in the way that she was like sort of saying to the Doctor, "You're pushing too hard," like basically sort of saying to him like, "Find a bit of your compassion," which would be the exact same thing I would be saying. I think that's why I sort of called it out earlier on in his section because like the episode itself was saying you're being a dickhead, through Nissa. Um, but then later on, when they're on the planet and she's sort of guiding Tegan around, she's very gentle with her. She's very careful with her. Again, totally seeing where the shipper vibes are coming from these two. But when she finds Nissa after the fortune, or when she finds Tegan, pardon, after the fortune teller, and Tegan is acting really weird, you can tell that Nissa's really upset, And
Mm.
like there is a fear there for Tegan that, to be honest, I don't think we've ever really seen that much emotion from Nissa directed, like pertaining to another person's safety or her emotional connection to the person since the Keeper of Traken.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Which it was great to see. I really liked it. In terms of the rest of the story, I agree. Again, the Doctor and Nissa working together is fantastic. I love Nissa figuring things out.
Hmm.
Because she doesn't do it in a snooty, holier than thou way. It's a natural, let's brainstorm, let's figure it out. Holy shit, I just thought about this, which is great. Um, I really liked how Sarah Sutton played the when the Mara is emerging, they have that sound and everyone's sort of staring at the Mara.
Hmm.
Um, and the Doctor's coming up beside her. Clearly he seems shocked that Nissa even succumbed to this,
Mm-hmm.
which again speaks very highly of Nyssa as a character. But she's giving him this look of fear of I fucking can't, and Sarah played that so well. She did so well. I thought that was really good.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I really quite liked her performance. I don't think it was her strongest performance ever, but I think it showed very subtle nuances of who Nyssa is.
Mm.
Do you know? It didn't hit you over the head with any of them, but like for a story to show like, what's Nyssa like as a person?
Mm-hmm.
You're like, cool, this is what Nyssa's like as a person. Do you know?
Yeah.
This is it, like
Yeah.
figuring shit out, you know, being the doctor's sort of second in command, caring for her friends. This is who she is, right here. Um, which I think was quite good.
Yeah. No, like I agree. Like that, it's not a bad performance, and we get all our usual Nissa beats with it. It's just I think I would have loved to have seen like a confrontation between like she finds the possessed Tegan and Tegan tries to, you know, pass the Mara onto her or something like that, and then Nissa has to use like the hypnosis device that she found to try and ward it off. I wanted like just like some little confrontation like that, you know?
Yeah, I think other than the confrontation between her and the doctor at the beginning, I think Nyssa's missing drama and conflict,
Yeah,
which isn't always necessary. And it sort of actually this story sort of reminds me of like particularly back with the first Doctor, like oh Ian was Ian in the story,
yeah,
and Barbara was Barbara in the story, and that's not a negative thing, but it means that there was nothing massive. There were a couple of things that stood out to me, but like for the story as a whole,
hmm,
you know, would I watch Snakedance for Nyssa?
yeah,
Maybe not.
yeah.
Do I enjoy her when I watch it though? Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. Like she's not. Like, we're not complaining about her, and like we're complaining. I think we're complaining about how the script doesn't serve her. We're just not complaining about her.
Yeah. But there is someone that people would watch Snake Dance for, I
Yep,
think.
yep, absolutely. Um. So yeah, look, as independent Tegan, we don't get a whole lot. We get about 15 minutes, but the real meat of this is Janet's performance throughout the entire story. Like, thi- this is such a good job by Janet. It really is, because she sells Tegan's fear and her innocence. Like, you know, when she kind of remembers her childhood in the dream sequence, she sells that so well. It's so believable, and you kind of wonder when you see that fear and that innocent nature that she has, like you fear for what the long-term ramifications of her being possessed by the Mara will be down the line. um so you're attached in that way, like you're invested in that capacity. In her Mara persona, Jesus Christ, she's fucking terrifying. Like malice is dripping off her, ridiculous. Like in the it's she just oozes like the sinister, evil destroyer of worlds vibe, and it's just so fucking unnerving that like the bits where like no, as we've talked about before, I have a massive phobia of snakes, so watching some parts of this weren't great for me. But like Janet did such a good job of being a serpent in human form that you completely buy into it. You completely just get this thing of the Mara is Janet Fielding, you know?
Mm.
Uh,
Yeah.
like, and at the end, then when she's freed from the Mara, and there's just that relief, like that relief of having gotten out from under it, but also like the is it gone? Please tell me it's gone. Please tell me I never have to go through this again. That bit, like again, just phenomenal job from Janet here. Phenomenal.
Yeah. I agree. I think for me, the interesting thing about this is that like the only real Tegan we see is the Tegan at the end. Um, because even the Tegan at the very beginning is influenced by the dream.
Yeah.
So we don't actually see true Tegan again until the very end. I think her reaction to the dream, and like even the fact that like she just goes along with the doctor, pushing her to talk about the dream, and she's so confused and whatever, and like it sort of shows you in that first few minutes that there is something wrong, because Tegan would never just be like, no, I don't know what to do. Like she never would be that sort of um woolly, I suppose,
Mm-hmm.
if you get what I mean. So it kind of shows you from the offset that there's something up. And to be honest, Janet plays that so well. And like the development, I think particularly it's her conversation with Nyssa, again, going back to that conversation with Nyssa after the fortune teller.
Mm-hmm.
Like that whole sequence is a bit bananas. Do you know what I mean? In the sense of like how Janet managed to play this completely other persona
Mm-hmm.
um so well. Um I think obviously we don't see much else of Tegan,
Mm-hmm.
independent of the Mara until, so obviously we had the bit at the fortune teller, and then it sort of, we didn't see any more of Tegan being somewhat in control until obviously we have that scene with the emergence of the Mara.
Mm.
I will. I disagree with something you said in your summary.
Which was.
You said Tegan calls out to the doctor to help her when there's the sort of Tegan and the snakes thing,
Mm-hmm.
right? I didn't read it that way.
Okay.
I read it a bit like Jolinar in The Line of Duty.
You'll have to remind me because I haven't seen that one now in a long time.
So Stargate SG-1, Sam gets taken over by Jolinar, and they put her in prison when they realize that, put her like in a cell
Mm-hmm.
when they realize that she's been taken over,
Mm-hmm.
and she's, Jolinar through Sam is having a conversation with Jack O'Neill,
Mm-hmm.
and then Jack starts to walk away, and suddenly we hear Sam's voice
Mm-hmm.
saying, "Help me, please," blah blah blah. Jack leaves, and then it switches back to Jolinar being like, "What will it take?" Meaning that that wasn't Sam that was talking; it was Jolinar
Oh,
pretending to be Sam.
okay.
And that's what I thought was happening in that sequence that you were referring to in your summary, where we have the Mara giving out, saying, "No, look at me, I need whatever, like, what's the doctor doing?" I saw it as the Mara pretending to be Tegan
Hmm.
to try and trick the doctor into doing, like, to looking up and giving in, rather than it being truly Tegan. So I don't know. I think for that we'd probably have to go to the script, or the, like, as in the actual like shooting script, or to the audio commentary or the novelization to figure out what the truth in
Yeah.
that was.
Because
Um,
yeah, no, I actually, I that's a really good thing. That's a really good idea. But I would, like, there's one thing that I would say to counter that then as well
hmm.
is we've seen before that when the Mara doesn't have 100% control of her, Tegan is able to fight and resist it a bit. And
Oh yeah.
and in that section there, the Mara is in distress. It's trying to stop the Doctor. So you could also say that it is the real Tegan desperately trying to break through with the last bit of energy she has. That is the real Tegan using
Oh
whatever
yeah.
resistance
And
she
it's
has.
it's the ambiguity of it that
Oh
makes it
yeah,
interesting, I think.
oh yeah. No, like
Do
actually,
you know
yeah.
that you can have two people who watch the exact same scene, and we take it in two different directions.
Hmm.
I would say that's probably the one thing I wished we had seen more of in this story, is subtle glimpses of Tegan still being there
Mm-hmm.
after her conversation with, not really after her conversation with us, but like after, the the Hall of Mirrors.
Mm-hmm.
In her conversations with Lon, in her conversations with Doug Dale or Doug Dolly, whatever his name is. I would have liked to have seen the odd one or two, like sort of double takes, or
Mm-hmm.
um, if you think about, I know I keep jumping around referencing other things, but I'm trying to sort of
It's what we do.
give you an example that maybe our listeners don't even realize what the fuck I'm talking about. But Sarah Jane Adventures, the first story with Androvax, when Sarah Jane gets taken over.
Mm.
And we have
Yeah.
those sort of cutscenes where you have Androvax in control, but like he looks into through Sarah Jane, he looks into a reflective surface, and we see
Mm-hmm.
Sarah Jane arguing with Androvax. You know, I would have liked to have seen one or two bits of that because I do think Tegan probably was fighting the whole time.
Oh yeah. No.
Um, and unfortunately, I read that scene that you're referring to with a bit of ambiguity.
Mm.
Um, but I would have liked to see more. Then we have like the devastating bit at the end.
Yeah.
And like massive kudos to Janet Fielding. I have had some issues with Janet Fielding in the past in terms of her acting.
Mm.
It's sometimes a bit over the top, and tonally maybe not quite
Yeah.
hitting where it
Mm.
needs to. Um, but in this, like her last bit in this is just sheer and utter devastation. And I was trying to think, when was the last time we had a companion go through a tough situation, which they go through regularly when you think about it, be left in that utter devastated state. Particularly when it comes to like mind control and whatever. And again, I can't help but think about Sarah Jane because she was mind controlled so many fucking times.
Mm.
Um, but like after Eldrad, she was kind of happy perky, like whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Um, After she tried to kill the doctor, she was just more embarrassed than anything else. Um, we never had the what have I done? What did I nearly do?
Mm.
Like none of that. I'm trying to think of another companion that we've seen sort of have that visceral reaction to what they went through. I can't think of anyone. Um,
One person that springs to mind is, because you're just talking about visceral reaction, is
hmm,
Barbara in the Keys of Marinus. Do you remember the episode with the brains in the jars that are cut?
yeah.
And when she breaks past the illusion, just like her utter terror and revulsion when she starts like swinging that club around and smashing up the lab and the jars. Like she's practically crying as she's doing it.
Oh yeah. Oh, that was very good. My difference with that though, just in terms of what I'm referring to, is that Barbara didn't. Barbara in the dream state didn't do anything wrong.
Yeah, yeah. Uh,
She didn't hurt anybody. There was loss of self, but not in the same way that Tegan has experienced.
um,
Um,
in that capacity, I don't think there has been anyone. Not that I can remember.
yeah, so it's great to see them actually leaning into that, and like I would sort of equate Tegan's like closing, scene with the doctor to be much more along the lines of something that you would see in more modern in terms of Doctor Who,
Yeah,
more modern science
yeah.
fiction shows.
Hmm.
Like that's something right out of like a TNG era Star Trek. It's something right out of Stargate.
Hmm.
Again, if we think back to that episode of Stargate where Sam first got taken over by Jolinar, and we have that scene at the end where she's just curled up in the bed in the infirmary and she's not talking to anybody.
Yeah,
Um, this is much more up there with feeling the emotional impact of what the companion went through.
yeah. No,
Um,
no, that's a good call out. It's a very good call out.
and I love that Janet got to do that, like, because like Tegan isn't quote unquote the smart one, and she wasn't quote unquote the young one because that was Edric.
Hmm.
Um, so to have her have this story arc between Kinda and this, it's actually really good. It's really good for Tegan as a character, and I really like it for Janet as well because she got to sort of stretch her her acting chops
Hmm.
a bit.
Yeah.
Okay, and then we're going on to our prominent characters, unless you have anything else to add on our companions.
Nope. The one question though I would ask is, further rambling down the line, would you include this as a potential great Tegan performance?
You and I have discussed this many times before,
Yeah.
mainly because Sarah Jane got brainwashed so many
Yeah.
times. I don't know.
Yeah.
Um, Again, when you compare it to something like Castrovalva, something like the second half of Logopolis,
Hmm.
um, where we really get to see Tegan in her own skin
Yeah.
doing amazing things, it'll depend. I do think though, whatever way it lines up, I do think that when we get to the rambling, if nothing else, I think Kinda and this will likely get an honourable mention, if nothing
Yeah.
else.
Absolutely. Just in terms of like,
In terms of a Janet
yeah,
performance,
absolutely. Yeah.
they were brilliant. Yeah.
Yeah. So now prominent characters.
Yeah. So we have Tana, Chala, and Dojin,
Hmm.
and then the other two fuckers.
Yeah.
And so, which way do you want to do them?
um, I think I would actually do Tana, Chella, Dojin first, and I
Okay.
think I do it in that order. Tana, she's almost got this spacey and Petunia type vibe going off with her because of how she coddles and obsesses over Lon, and like she's not a malicious person. Like what we're told essentially is that she is she's the wife of the head of the Federation, and Lon is the heir apparent to that role. Because it seems like it's a hereditary title as opposed to a voted in thing.
Mm.
Um, and so, like, she's the proud, doting mother. But I think what she fails to realize, just as a character, is like by coddling and obsessing over Lon, she's actually reinforcing like this bratty behavior that she doesn't want him to have. Like she treats him like a child and he acts like a child, but she doesn't want him to act like a child. But
Mm.
she doubles down on treating him like a child when he acts out. So it's like this.
Yeah.
It's like this constant cycle. That's why I was saying like with the Aunt Petunia vibes, like the whole thing of like my little boy can do no wrong. Um, and like I was intrigued at one point when she caught Nyssa looking for the key in Ambril's office, and I thought like, oh, we're actually going to see the real, mover and shaker, the real kind of like, yeah, I'm not just some dim bimbo. I'm actually watching and observing the whole thing, and that just kind of went nowhere. It was just I
Mm.
suppose, a really good aha acting moment by the actress. Um, so yeah, I think if anything, if her biggest contribution is just making Lon the person that he is and not realizing that she's doing it.
Yeah, I would agree with you on the sort of space and Petunia thing. Um, Without Petunia's fucking negative, because she doesn't look down on anybody.
No,
Like, she's a socialite who coddles her son,
yeah,
but she's a nice woman. Do you know what I mean? Like, she's not a bad person.
she's like
Um,
the you take the mollycoddle nature of Aunt Petunia and you mix it with fucking Lexwana or Diana's mother,
Roxana. Yeah,
Loxana. Yeah.
yeah. I get like, so she takes an interest. She really wants Lon to connect with the people and stuff like that. Um, I do wonder where the fuck is her husband. Um, he's the head of the Federation and he's not at the big celebrations. Whatever.
Hmm.
Um, but clearly, like she at least sees herself as like the power behind the throne. But again, not in an overly negative way. Like the fact that she like obviously is very defensive of her son, but she's like, why would they try to kill you? Like
Mm.
she doesn't assume the worst of people.
No.
Um, with the exception of Nyssa, who was, in fairness, snooping around trying to get the key to the cell
Mm.
where the guy was like, that's just caught red-handed, literally. Do you know what
Mm. Yeah.
I mean? What I was a bit confused by,
Mm-hmm.
and then a bit disappointed by, just in terms of how it progressed, was when um so they're in Amber's office. Um Lon opens the box, or Amber opens the box to show the sacred stone or whatever. And the doctor and Nyssa and Chala escape. And Amber goes after them. And you have Lon and Tana on their own. And he gets angry with her,
Mm-hmm.
very angry with her. And then the next time we see them in that room is when Amber is coming back, and she stood with her back to the room looking out the window.
Yeah.
And she's in shadow. She's a very bright person, very bright in the way she's
Mm-hmm.
shot, but she's sort of much darker, more subdued. And first I thought, okay, the Mara has taken her over as well,
Mm-hmm.
but that didn't happen. Then I thought it's just she's realized that she's lost her son to something, but she like sort of that thing of like she can't work against him because the body is still the body of her son,
Yeah.
but she recognizes that she has lost him to the Mara. Um, but then after that scene, she's like, "Oh, look at him! Doesn't he look amazing?" And I don't know if it's that she had a moment of, "Oh, holy shit," and then Space and Petunia personality took over,
Mm.
and she just continues coddling him
Mm-hmm.
as like a defense mechanism. I was I don't I was really curious what the fuck was happening, because
Yeah.
I was like,
Because there's
she knows there's something fucking wrong with him. We got this sense of her being disappointed or upset or afraid or whatever was going through her mind when she had her back to him, and then literally a scene later she's back to normal.
yeah.
It was really weird.
There's certain directional choices that taken here with Tana that you think they're leading somewhere, and it's not. It's just these random shots or random directions, and it's like I don't know what's going on. I thought it would have been amazing if she was taken over by the Mara, and you can then see its spreading influence. Like it starts off with Doug Dale, the carnival guy, and then it goes into Tana and it works its way throughout like the the palace guards, like just to show the spread of it, you know?
Hmm. I did. I guess I did think about that, and then I did get a sort of like a ugh, like Oedipus moment of like, if because you imagine
Oh
when
yeah.
Lon and Tegan sort of like clasped their hands together and they were looking like this weird like evil power couple.
Yeah, there is a
I'm like, oh, I don't want to see him do that with his mother.
there is a slightly kind of like a sexual undertone to that coupling.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
that's yeah, it's not that.
yeah.
Um, but great performance by Colette though.
Oh yeah,
Um,
yeah,
I guess I think it's very difficult, and credit to Christopher Bailey for writing it as well. I think it's very difficult to write the sort of socialite mollycoddler parent, but have that person be inherently a nice person.
yeah.
Do you know?
It's not
I think
some.
it's very hard because you instantly lean into like evil queen thing, or
Yeah,
bitchy socialite who looks down on everybody and whatever, and we don't get that with her. I did sort of wonder if like she was kind of hoping that when her husband dies she could kind of get together with Ambrose, but
yeah.
I wouldn't
well,
if I was you, Tana,
well,
because
no,
he's a bit of a dick.
no, but she's like in the banquet sequence where he's like telling her all about the artifacts. She's bored to fuck. Would you just shut up and serve the shrimp cocktails already? That's pretty much what she's
Yeah,
like.
Yeah, which is the way she entertains him then,
Oh
obviously,
yeah.
in the rest of the story. Like, she's someone who really knows how to do her job. It's sort of, um, in a way, she kind of reminded me in that sense of the mother from Brave, in the sense that, like, she knows how to play her role.
How to schmooze.
Yeah, but like she knows what the expectations are of her, and she knows how to do that. While her grown man child is flouncing around on the couch.
I've never seen Brave, so all I can think of is Frigga.
You've never seen Brave?
Never seen Brave, but I got
How
to.
the fuck have you? You have a 4, nearly 5-year-old. How have you never seen Brave?
We've never gotten around to it. Give me a chance. But instead, I'm going to just possibly transpose that character into Freya from the Thor movies, or Frigga from the Thor
Yeah,
movies.
no, friggin' the Thor movies. That works well. You've never fucking seen Brave.
No, I have not seen Brave,
I,
and I
I'm
try.
shook.
I'm trying to come
I'm
up with.
shook.
I'm trying to come up with a comeback to say, well, yeah, well, you didn't see this until I showed it to you, but I'm fucking struggling.
I've seen Disney movies before you showed it to me. Like, it's. I'm genuinely like, it's been out for so long.
Hmm.
And you and Sarah are you and Sarah. How the fuck have you not seen it?
I don't know.
Do you
I
own it?
I think so.
Oh,
Yeah,
for fuck's sake.
it's just one of those ones I never got around to.
Okay, here's your homework
Hmm.
for next week.
All right.
Right?
Hmm.
Watch Brave. I would maybe suggest that you watch Brave without Alice
Yeah.
because there is a whole thing where like people get turned into bears. So,
Yeah.
spoiler, but like
It's
the
not.
film's been out
Yeah.
for fucking over a decade.
But it's not. It's not my fault that it happened to fall on fucking Pride Day, and I was stuck working while you flounced off to the cinema to watch it.
It's been a decade. You and your wife live and fucking breathe Disney. There is literally zero excuse. We've gotten massively, massively off track.
Yes, we have.
Um, who do you want to talk about next?
Um, I'll talk about Cello next. Hopefully, there
Okay.
won't be any sort of a Disney movie I haven't seen an analogy with him.
Fucking hell.
Um, I get the impression that he either was or he wished he was Dojan's student and not Ambrose's. Because
100%.
yeah, because like he's the historian that doesn't discount the legends, but instead tries to ground him in reality of what the history he's studying is, like um the way all legends are kind of there's a basis in fact in them. So you just go back far enough, you find the right um, archive, you find the right historical document, and it will kind of explain, oh yeah, that's where this legend comes from, type thing. So he doesn't discount it because he knows that, yeah, no, there's the shredded proof there, unlike Ambril. So, and I think he knows from, again, either having worked with him or just heard about his work, Dojan was the exact same and someone that he admired. Um, and I think then him working alongside the Doctor, who is like also like a fellow academic, who also is open to this thing of like legends and trying to find the root cause of them. I like that dynamic. I think that works really well together. And like, while he doesn't get to interact with the others to like say the same extent as Damon did last week, he's still a good story based companion for the Doctor.
Mm, yeah, I agree with you. And I was trying to look it up there, and my brain is like forgetting how to Google. I think I agree with you on the sense that like Cello wants to be, like I said, he wanted to be Dojan's student, and he kind of strikes me as the type of man where when he was younger he would go to the festivals and whatever, and he'd see Dojin, and he did all his studies to apprentice or whatever under Dojin, only to eventually get to be old enough, and Dojin had left.
Mm.
Do you know? And now he's stuck with this other fucking prick. Um, he's very much the he's not like um uh naive, or like he's not like, how do I put it? He doesn't have this blind faith in
No,
everything,
no.
but he's open to possibility, which I think makes him an interesting character. And like I said when we were talking about the Doctor, I love the Doctor didn't push him. And like, Chella is someone who sees something wrong and feels like he has to do something about it. Very similar to, again, I've forgotten his name from last week.
Damon.
Um, Damon, yeah, very very similar vibe. I think Damon's a bit more sure of himself,
Mm.
to do what he was doing, but very much a similar vibe. Um, I love that, like, once Chella sort of realizes what's happening, he also goes 110% in with the Doctor in this, and it's like, cool, something's fucking wrong. These people are trying to fix it. Cool, I'm with them 110%. Um, which I think is great. I am curious now, like, it's sort of like, after our 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 trio leave, does Chella sort of step up into that, chief whatever role, um, to be that bridge between the sort of almost, you mentioned Dojin kind of going a bit sort of force ghosty,
Mm-hmm.
so sort of like, Jedi like nature of the snake dancers and all that kind of stuff, versus the more practical element of the Federation. I do wonder whether Chella will step up to sort of be that bridge
Yeah.
between the two.
No, I think definitely.
Um,
I think definitely Ambril is out, and Chella would
yeah,
act as like a natural successor because he bridges the two worlds, as you say. Yeah.
yeah. And then we have Dojin.
Mm-hmm. And well, yes, he doesn't appear until the very last episode, and even then, he's got very limited screen time. His presence is felt throughout the entirety of the story, because everyone references him, and everyone references how he had Ambril's job. He went up into the hills. Like you know about the snake dancers before you know about him, and everything is an air of mystery. Are the snake dancers, are they a cult dedicated to the Mara, or are they a group dedicated against the Mara's return? And because you don't know that, you don't know if Dojin is this wild card, um, potential villain, or if he's the hero that will guide the Doctor. So
Mm,
I loved just having that arc throughout the entire story, and I was like, it makes you really interested to see um, what Dojin is about, because I didn't really put it into the story, into the recap, because narratively it's hard to try and explain these things. But you see clips of Dojin meditating in the wilderness about 2 or 3 times before you actually see him,
mm,
and so when he finally turns up and he guides the Doctor and he kind of gets him, he focuses him, and again he acts as that sort of Force Ghost Obi-Wan Kenobi type scenario. Uh, it was the payoff was worth it. And then at the end, when he kind of packs up and he goes into the wilderness, it's like, my job is done. There's nothing for me back in my old world. I'll just carry on living out here in the wilderness. So a fascinating character, like, and credit to Christopher Bailey then for actually pulling that off. A character that
mm,
you only see for about 5 minutes max screen time that has an impact throughout the entirety of the story, and the payoff is worth it.
Yeah, I would agree. I think as well, we only see him for 5 minutes on screen, and to us, a lot of that is actually a still image
Yeah.
of him, which is interesting. But yeah, no, I totally agree with you. I think Doshin's a really interesting character. I actually found the visual of him walking away at the end
Hmm.
kind of reminded me of films about Australia and Aboriginals going walkabout.
Yeah.
You know,
Hmm.
particularly the film Australia, which I think I told you this was put up on Disney as like a series called Faraway Downs. It's just the fucking film cut up into
Yeah.
like 6 episodes.
You told me about that,
I
alright.
was so confused
Because it's like three and a
because I
half
really
hours
liked
long.
that film.
It's 3.5 hours long,
Yeah,
so that.
it's a really fucking long film. It's a really good film. Um, but there is an Aboriginal character in that film um, who stays far away from everyone else, but he's observing, and eventually he just walks off. It sort of reminded me of that a little bit. Um, I do wonder, in a way, it kind of makes me sad that, like, can he go back? Can he go back to living in the city, or is what he has learned and what he knows now, does it make living in this busy, you know, bubbling city with lots of different people and personalities and da, 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 does it make that impossible? Do you know?
Mm.
Um, you know, because it's something I always find with like particularly characters who like, oh, they found oneness and blah blah blah.
Hmm.
It's like, is the isolation component of that or the wanderer component of that then by choice as a result of that oneness, or is it by necessity because by finding the oneness in yourself, it's actually like it's impossible to be around other people for a prolonged period of time. Um,
I would.
that's not something specifically
Yeah.
in this story. It's
Yeah.
just something I always
Yeah.
get with
Yeah.
characters like that.
No, I think I'd kind of go with maybe the. I don't know if you'd call it bittersweet, but the thing of where I've served my purpose and my life is out here now. And like,
Mm,
I find something kind of oddly sweet and heartwarming about that.
yeah,
That he
uh,
he put his life to a great purpose, and then by doing that, he has found a way of enjoying life that he didn't have before, and he's now going back to that.
yeah. I think the one thing that was missing from this story about Dojin and his dedication and everything he was doing is obviously that explanation of the only way to destroy the Mara was at its emergence or whatever that
Hmm.
apparently we're going to get next
Yeah.
episode. Because you do sort of wonder, the question was asked, why didn't he destroy the Great Crystal while he was the one in charge of it?
Yeah.
Obviously, we find out the reason next week
Hmm.
why he didn't do that.
Yeah.
But it's the one weird sort of thing where, like, obviously, Christopher Bailey had intended to explain it, but when you have to take that bit out, it does sort of be like, okay, this is great. Like, he did the whole like Obi-Wan Kenobi thing,
Hmm.
but why? Do you know?
Especially as like, and it's actually a thing that I put in as part of my overall. Like, there's some stuff there that you could have very easily trimmed to make room for that scene. Very
Yeah.
easily trimmed.
I don't know if there was as much in. Actually, do you know what it is in? Actually, no. I'm gonna put a pin in it because we'll get to it in the overall.
All right.
Sorry, I'm
Um,
unconscious time. Um. So then we have the other two donkeys
mhm.
that are in the story.
So We'll go with Ambrose first, I think. And no, honestly, I don't know whether the Mara were the real villain here, because fuck me, this guy is insufferable. Oh,
Hmm.
he's so up himself, and there's just I'm a history guy. I love history, but Christ Almighty, this guy would fucking turn me off it in a heartbeat. Um, he's just so arrogant and condescending, and oh, and the thing then that kind of I thought was kind of funny was normally when you have the academic character that gets brought over to the dark side, be it willingly or unwillingly, usually it's the lure of power that brings them over. You know, if you help me build this giant death ray, you'll have the greatest power source in the world, or and you'll be credited with the power source in the world, all this kind of stuff. It's like, no, if you give us the great crystal, you'll be the guy writing all the history books. And like, it's such a weird motivation, like that the lure is like academic prowess as opposed to absolute power. Um, yeah, so or as I have it here, sorry, um, it's not the lure of forbidden knowledge or technology; it's the lure of cataloging.
Hmm.
Yeah, so yeah, but he's just insufferable. That that's why I have him down as far towards the villain line.
Yeah, like for me, thinking back to what we were saying a second ago about Chala and whatever.
Hmm.
If we say that Dojin is like Indiana Jones who found that, you know, the Ark was real, or who found, who um, you know, took the leap of faith or stuff,
Mm.
whatever, in Last Crusade. And I'm going to mix up my Indiana Jones movies now deliberately.
Okay.
But he walked the path of the righteous man, and
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff. Um, Ambril is Bullock or whatever the fuck his name was in Raiders.
Belloc. Yeah.
Um, he explores history, but like everything for him, like it wasn't about power in the sense of you will have the power over, but it was about power. It was about power and influence. Of you will have the credit of having discovered these amazing um, historical artifacts. Historical artifacts that, mind you, this guy does not give a thundering fuck about, right? He just wants to say he has them. He's like the collector in Star Trek or whatever, the guy who collected data just for the sake of
Oh yeah. Yeah.
having him. Or he's like Belloc, who ends up siding with evil so that he can say that he was the one who discovered the Ark. Do you know?
Although to be fair, didn't Belloc say, like, he deliberately said that the Ark is a radio, like a transmitter to speak to God? So, like,
Yeah, but Belloc was always a bit of a dickhead who just wanted to
to
have the things. Do you know what I
oh
mean?
yeah, to like to fuck with his head as well. Like, yeah.
Yeah. Do you know what I mean? So I think, like, you know, there were times I wondered, like, did Dojin, because we see Dojin in quiet, contemplating whatever for most of the story. And at the beginning, because of the way it's shot, obviously with the CSO and everything, I was like, did Amberl have him, like, did Amberl have him sent away? Do you know?
Mm.
Was he, why can I not think of the word?
Exiled, banished.
That's the word. Did Amberl have him exiled so that he could have his position? Um, and obviously that isn't what it is. Obviously, we find out later that George went off by himself. But like
Yeah.
that's the thing where I sort of see the sort of Belloc and Amberl. Do you know what I mean? That he's like he wants to, and he doesn't actually believe in any of it. He doesn't believe in the history. He doesn't believe in the teachings. He just wants the pretty shiny and wants to be able to say that he's the one who found the pretty shiny
Mm.
because that gives him power and influence in those socialite circles?
I think probably when Dojin started talking about the legend and saying they need to prepare for the return of the Mara, which obviously raised eyebrows. I think Amber probably took advantage of that and started whispering in some ears. And I think Dojin probably caught wind of that. Look, no one's going to help me. So then he fucking upsticked, and then Amber kind of said, "Oh well, I'll take over." I don't
Mm,
think he got him exiled. Yeah, nor as we said, like yeah, he went voluntarily. But I think Amber speeded up the process for Dojin leaving.
mm, yeah.
Actually, just going with Indiana Jones metaphors, maybe Dojin's like Henry Jones Sr., who like really did believe in the legend of the Grail.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, and Amberl is the Nazi.
Yeah, yeah, pretty much.
And then we have Lon.
Lon, not Cheney, but Lon Clunes. So
Mm,
first thing and foremost, Martin Clunes has really red lips. He's very prominent red lips. They're almost distracting. Um, but he's a petulant little shit. Like he's not quite Joffrey level, but he's just a petulant little shit. Like everything is boring to him. Yet he delights in taking the piss out of whatever's suggested to him to do, to like find of interest or be entertained with or whatever. And it's so yeah, as a kind of a person, he's just a spoiled douchebag. But when he's possessed, he's a lot more interesting because he's essentially the same person, but he now has this evil within him that has a goal. And the Mara is like, "Oh, I've got a winner here. I'm going to utilize Lon's status to really fuck shit up."
mm,
And potentially no one would bat an eye because of how much of a little prick this kid is.
mm.
I say kid, like he's like Martin Clunes was I think about like 22, 23 when he did this role. So I'd say he's playing like a 17, 18-year old realistically.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how old Martin Clunes was. I could probably look it up.
I think he was about 22, 23.
Have a look. Martin Clunes was born in November 1961. So who would 22?
Yeah.
Who would 22? Like, the question I have about Lon, Paddy, how much of Lon after he connects with the Mara is still just Lon?
Oh, I'd say a fair amount of it, like
Like, he doesn't do the weird voice thing.
no.
The Mara clearly isn't trying to emerge through him or anything. I'm like, Lon was a dickhead before, and he's a dickhead now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, to me, it just looks like Tegan slash the Mara just got him to agree in general.
I imagine it's a case of the Mara is like, get me the fuck out of this kid.
Yeah, but like I genuinely watching it, I was like, okay, so Lon disagrees with releasing the Mara because shits and giggles. Like as you're watching it through, there is no change in his personality between the beginning of the story and the second half of the story, except his temper is a little bit more frayed. Is the only difference.
Mm.
But the way he treats people around him is essentially the same.
Yeah.
The contempt he has for people is essentially the same. And I'm like, obviously with Tegan we get this 100% change in personality. With Dugdale or Dugdolly, the sort of carnival guy, he had a 100% shift in personality.
Mm.
Lon just continues being Lon. It's like, oh no, he's turned evil. Okay, maybe this is what happens when your like sleep lounge area also just happens to be the foyer.
Yeah.
and people keep walking through while you're trying to have a nap.
Mm. Also, like he sulks in like the most childish way possible. Like, I'm a grown man. I'm 22 years old. I'm the heir to the Federation. I'm going to curl up on this couch and like sleep on both of my hands at the same time and turn away from my mommy.
Yeah. Um, because the performance, I'd say, is amazing. Like, Martin Clunes' performance is
Oh yeah,
fantastic.
absolutely.
But in many ways, for me, I think Lon was the least interesting
Yeah,
to watch in all of it. Do you know, like it it's weird. It's weird.
yeah,
Um, I almost would have preferred if he started off like Dudley-esque.
yeah.
If we're going with the opportunity reference, if he started off like Dudley-esque and ended up like Malfoy, do you know? As opposed, as in like we're thinking like Half Blood Prince Malfoy or
Yeah.
Order of the Phoenix Malfoy, as opposed to starting off like Dudley in the movies and finishing up like Dudley in the book. Guess
Yeah,
what? Same person. Do you know?
yeah,
Or going from Dudley in like Philosopher's Stone to Dudley in Order of the Phoenix.
yeah.
Same fucking character.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I think he was missing some personality shift, which would have made him a bit more compelling. But again, the performance by Martin Clunes
Oh,
was
really good.
brilliant.
Really, really good. Can't fault it.
Yeah, and then lastly we have our villain of the Mara itself,
Hmm.
itself.
Yeah. So we have the origin of the Mara. Oh, gimme, 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 gimme. While, yes, I'm not a fan of their physical manifestation, and I don't think I ever will be, I do love the origin story so much. Like, the all the evil aspects of a civilization made manifest into this one like your pseudo psychic physical entity that destroys an entire empire and sets up its own empire in its place. It's something I love in all fiction. And here, like the Mara were really good in Kinda. Like, there were so many questions I had. They were really intimidating, but in the realm beyond with those weird rejects from a fucking David Bowie video. And here now then as well, like we have just there's so much malice and dread hanging over the story with the very concept of the Mara. It's so good. And I would love to hear like or even read like a short story or hear like a Big Finish audio of the actual fall of the Menusan Empire as the Mara are made manifest. I'd love that. The Mara are one of my favorite villains that have come out in the most recent time.
Do you want to hear my theory?
Tell me your theory.
So there was something about this story that kind of irritated me from a directing prop department standpoint,
Right.
which is we have the Great Crystal.
Mm-hmm.
The Great Crystal is blue.
Yes.
Think back to the other sort of phobia inducing creature that
Mm-hmm.
we've had on the show that is ginormous and whatever and can speak to you in your mind
Mm-hmm.
and can control you. Um, it is the Great One,
Mm-hmm.
Queen of the Eight Legs in Planet of the Spiders,
Yes.
who was made that way by a crystal that
Yes.
happened to be fucking blue.
Mm-hmm.
And then as we got further and further on, and we hear that how the Mara came into being, I was like, oh my god, they were trying to recreate the crystal from Planet of the Spiders. And what they instead made was this crystal that took all of these negative components and made the Mara. That is my theory. They were trying to recreate the crystal from Planet of the Spiders.
Interesting. Very interesting. And we know that the Menusan Empire, before the Mara came into existence, like were highly technological, so they could definitely
Mm-hmm.
have advanced space flight and heard stuff of the rumors of the Blue Crystal.
Mm-hmm. So that is my theory.
Hmm.
Letters on a postcard, if you agree. Letters on a postcard. Answers on a postcard.
Yeah,
Why do I always say letters on a postcard where it's always answers on a postcard? Whatever.
I don't know.
Answers are comprised of sentences, which are comprised of words, which are comprised of letters. But yeah, answers on a postcard, but that is my theory about how the Mara came to be. That, like, the Machinations were trying to create or recreate the crystal from
Hmm.
Planet of the Spiders. Um, but yeah, other than that though, I think the different aspects of the Mara are really interesting. I love Mara Tegan.
Hmm.
Like we've discussed, I think that was great. Um, I just think as a continuation of Kinda, it was really cool. I actually did kind of miss though the David Bowie rejects.
Yeah.
Um, I would have, again, like, going back to what I was saying about, I would have liked to have seen more definitive example of Tegan fighting back. Um, I kind of was a bit disappointed we didn't get a in the mind of Tegan
Hmm.
sequence
Yeah. I.
of her versus particularly the male Mara personification that she dealt with in Kinda. Um, I was kind of disappointed we didn't get one of those.
Mhm.
Um, because I would have liked that. But no, the Mara I think are a really interesting villain. I think as a two-story arc that a lot of people wouldn't even have realized was going to be an arc.
Mhm.
I think it was done really well.
Mhm.
I do think had last season been handled better, we would have gotten we could have gotten more drip feeds of Tegan still being infected as such
Yeah.
by the Mara. Like, again, if we were making this today in a Russell T Davies or Stephen Moffat or even Chris Chibnall show running era, that's likely what they would have done.
Mhm.
Do you know? With having the story and then having comments or drips or like her looking off into space or her saying she didn't sleep well or whatever, we would have had that sort of drip fed
Mhm.
through until we got to Snakedance.
Yeah.
Um, but no, I think the Mara are a very interesting villain, and I'm glad they're done. I'm glad it didn't go on for too long.
Mhm.
Do you know? But similar to you, I will be interested in a sort of the rise and fall of the Mara and the Minotaurs.
Mhm.
I would be quite interested in that.
Definitely.
So, Paddy, we have talked about the story summary, we've done the trivia, we've done the character discussion, we've talked about how I'm massively disappointed you haven't seen Brave. Now it's time to close out our thoughts on Snakedance. So, again, if you're new, the way we work it is in our overall thoughts, we give our thoughts on the story as a whole. We give it a score out of 5. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Thoughts as a whole and score out of 5. And usually we have a look and see how it performed in relation to other stories, either in the season or in previous seasons. So, Paddington, again, if you wouldn't mind, please, going first. Thoughts and score, please.
Of course. And also for new listeners, Trish doesn't give out to me as much when I haven't seen something. But Brave is a particularly big bone for her at the
I
moment.
just don't get it. Was so, like, the marketing around it and like the it, the Scottishness of it, and it's just how can you not have fucking seen it?
I just like I really hope that Robot Chicken hasn't spoiled it for me because all I can think of is now, that's me mother. She's a bear.
Well, yes, that is a part of it, but
Oh,
like it's oh no, I'm
okay.
mind blown. Okay,
All
talk
right.
about this story though.
Right. I really enjoyed this story. I really did. It was a combination of a villain that I liked the first time, and I've now grown to love, and it has joined the great pantheon of fuck off entities that scare the ever living bejesus out of me. I love the dark atmosphere of the story, even though it was
Mm.
very brightly shot. There's just this suspense, like there's this whole thing of dread over every aspect of it. You're waiting for like the fucking hammer to fall, and it was done brilliantly. The lore of the villain is good. Good performances from Janet and Martin Clunes. Um, I thought Peter did a really good job this week with his thing of the Doctor. Um, I liked Chella, and as I said, even though he wasn't there for the whole time, I thought the writing and payoff for Dojin was great. Um, the one big issue I had though was they said that they ran over time, and that's why they couldn't include that last explanation scene. That had to be shifted to the next episode.
Mm.
There's 2 minutes of footage here of a fucking Punch and Judy show that has
Yeah.
no bearing on the story whatsoever. You mean to tell me that that was so integral that you had to cut the other thing? No, that was fucking pointless. Cut that and then bring in the additional scene. Also, you didn't need as many scenes of Tegan, or Nyssa wandering the marketplace looking for Tegan. So you can shave 4 or 5 minutes off the runtime of this, and you can definitely include that scene that you cut. So that was my biggest gripe, and I think overall I really enjoyed the story. It's definitely one that I think I would watch again, start to finish, not a bother. So I'm giving it a 4 out of 5.
Wow. Given the fact that it has your biggest nightmare, that is a massive.
Yeah, like it was just done it was done so well, and hats off to Christopher Bailey for writing a really good story.
Yeah, I know. I agree with you. I think for me, I did actually really enjoy this story. Um, I thought the idea behind it was very good. I thought the balance of characters was handled quite well, not perfect, but quite well. Um, I thought Janet Fielding did an amazing job. Again, like we said, with her and Kinda, I think the balance between the Doctor and Nyssa worked very well. Nyssa and Tegan worked very well, and our supporting cast were very, very good. Um, like I said, even Brian Miller, like as the sort of
Mm.
Carney character, whatever, was still really compelling and really good to watch. My couple of negatives were just the Doctor continued to be a bit of a dickhead at the beginning, though he did redeem himself a bit at the end. Um, I would have liked to have seen a bit more of inside Tegan's mind.
Mm.
And for me, more so than anything else, because I mean, I agree with you on, we should have had that final scene that explains why the fuck Dojin didn't destroy it before. Um, but I'm trying to think, and I could probably go back into your notes about how much could we have cut from specifically episode 4
Mm.
to make space for that, because I agree with you. Nissa looking for Tegan in the market what goes on for quite a while, but that's in like episode 1, episode 2.
Mm.
That wouldn't have benefited from a pacing perspective, this scene at the end of episode 4.
Mm.
The Punch and Judy show, I agree with you, goes on way too long. However, the point of the Punch and Judy show is to tell the story of the Mara and how like Punch being Lon is lost to the Mara, and eventually it's telling the story of Tegan, because you see that like the snake puppet is
Mm.
essentially eating Punch,
Mm.
and it's very reminiscent of the scene of what the visual that we get for the Mara merging with Tegan, if you get me.
Yeah, no, yeah, I get you.
Um, but I do agree it went on too long. I just don't know if there was enough of it to cut to then make space. Um, I think everything else was really, really good. I actually really enjoyed watching this. I ended up watching it in two halves just because I unrelated to the show. I was quite sleepy and I fell asleep. Um, but it was really, really good. Nice follow up to Kinda, and for me, it's a good um, it's a good sort of elevation of Arc of Infinity, which was okay. Like you didn't think it was too good, but Arc of Infinity was okay. And this is a nice elevation step, and I'm hoping that's going to lead to good things. So I also gave this story a 4. Um, there's not much I could really think to add to bring it up to a 5, other than, like I said, there's a couple of small nitpicky things, but the nitpicky things that stick with you, so you kind of just keep thinking about them. But yeah, I think it was really, really well done, and a good outing for pretty much everybody in our cast. So, in terms of this season so far, so we've only had two stories in season 20 so far, but we're already beating season 19 on average. Although, like, season 19 did have a couple of 4s in there, and yet it's still my 4s for you. It never hit a 4 for me, so we'll have to see. But next week is going to be interesting.
Yes, it is.
I have never seen next week's story, but I know something about it.
I wonder what that is.
So next week we will be discussing Mordrin Undead.
Yes.
And I said that in a very positive way.
Yeah. So, guys, to hear our thoughts on Mordrin's Undead and also my thoughts on Brave, you'll have to tune into us next week. So until then, bye.
Bye.